Focus. Click the links for Odysee, Bit Chute. Join the channel. Become a valued member. Or support channel on Coffee. Subscribe to the various other links. Crypto for those people who want to stay anonymous or perhaps need to stay anonymous. Just as well. Up to you. Or Gab, Discord, Telegram. Those are kind of a bit free speech. So, don't go in there expecting like it's a normie YouTube channel. There's a lot of potty mouths in there who I try to punish, but it doesn't seem effective. If I read, I remember when this came out, I wasn't reading The Punisher, which like a lot of comics, people go, even Kevin Smith, as we'll talk about in a second, we're aware of comics without reading them. As he says, I don't read The Punisher. I don't have any skin in the game. Well, yeah, most people don't read The Punisher. They're vaguely aware of the logo, and that's about it. Spider-Man, he shoots webs, he swings around the city. Batman, Superman, yeah, vaguely aware. Most people are not reading comics because comics are not what they were 30 years ago. And you think back to, like, comics matter? No, absolutely, comics do not matter. Comics mattered 30 years ago, for sure. Now they're just IP farms, which you need to keep alive so you can own those properties so other people aren't able to also confuse the intellectual property rights by making their own, Spider-Man type of characters. So they did this with the Matrix 4. They go, we're going to take back the concept of the red pill, and we're going to take back the Punisher skull, and we're gonna upset those chads. It's like, the Matrix 4, nobody watched it. And it would, like, the original Matrix has got like 20 years of cultural significance, that concept of the red pill. You're not going to take that back from the Chads or the Punisher skull. It's like, it's just, there's probably more than half the people who look at that skull it's just a stylized skull to them. They're like, what's the Punisher? Oh, some kind of superhero. And that's the extent of their knowledge. So no, you're not going to take this back in a time where, like, you've had how many decades of the Punisher impacting people's psychology, and then you change it to a comic that's going to have less than 1% of that same cultural impact. Anyway, so, like, to read this scene in a comic, this absolute patronizing level of cringe. I know a lot of left-wing people, they always say, like, cringe is overused. That's all. You guys have one joke, two jokes, three jokes. It just goes on and on. Because the left wing never stops supplying us with humor. So they say cringe is overused. It's like, well, secondhand embarrassment. It's not really, because you guys keep doing these cringy things. You keep doing this, like, cat mom, wine aunt humor. Or who this guy, Jerry Connell? No, not Jerry Connell. Jerry, this other guy who's involved in this thing. They keep doing this just stupid stuff. Like, to write a scene like this, just absolutely patronizing, and think that the people reading your comic would be on board with it. I know there's not that many people who are reading The Punisher these days, but it seems. Are we out of touch, or the kids? It must be the kids that are out of touch. Jerry Conway. Sorry, I forgot his name. Remember when this came out too? We're going to get to Kevin Smith. Kevin Smith is, what is it? He's, a broken clock. He's right for an instant. He's kind of a tool who is high on his own supply and who nowadays ruins everything he touches, especially when he involves his idiot wife, Jennifer Schwabach, I think, who I suspect sucked his talent out via his penis and replaced it with weed and soy. Kevin Smith is kind of hard to pin down because he's a left-wing twat, but he's not totally developmentally disabled. Every so often he'll surprise you. In Jay and Silent Bob Part 2, he went after some sacred cows to the globalists, some of those groups that must not be named. He went after them. He made fun of them. Like, that's not something you see in Hollywood with people who are firmly on the plantation. That one scene would have just been edited out. So there were funny scenes in Jay and Silent Bob Part 2. It's like they were doing stuff that was really, really cringy by like 50 years. They're making jokes about the Kathleen Kennedy Club. It's 2020 when you made the movie, or it's in current year. It's like that. It's not 100 years ago. It's bizarre that you would straw man that in. So they did that kind of thing. It's like he's just some 50-year-old guy who's like vaguely cruising social media, and he hears like, oh, this is what my daughter is talking about. It's talking about the fashionable people are very, very popular. It's like, no, that's just a left-wing straw man that they're tilting, a windmill that they're tilting against. It's like you can't put something in a movie that feels like it's 100 years and anachronism. But he put it in there, and he did a lot of weird things. I mean, but it was like he did police brutality, and it's like a lot of it was just, okay, we've seen this before, dude. It feels like you're making a political propaganda movie for your 20-year-old daughter who's like whispering stupid things. But then they did also funny things where the daughter was, super sexual, and she was sexually objectifying Chris Evans, Chris, the guy who played Thor. So then they went after that one group of that one Abrahamic religion, which must not be named. It's just a quick joke, but it was like they out and out said it. They came out and said it. It's like, wow, it's just not something you see in Hollywood. So to Kevin Smith's credit, he's not completely on the plantation. So it's hard to pin him down. Yeah, he did the He-Man thing. The thing is, in his mind, it's like, okay, there are two groups, there are multiple groups of people. There are left-wing people who are doing things for one reason, and it gets the same result. And then Kevin Smith, who's more of a stoner left-wing person, but who's also, like, he'll say something funny even if it's not politically correct, as long as it's right, like he did with the Muslim girl, that joke in part 2. So, but it's like most of the time he's going to reach this, the Venn diagram's going to overlap, but not entirely. So that's where Kevin Smith is a little bit outside the norm. But then he did the He-Man thing, and people are like, dude, this is just standard Hollywood stunning and brave stuff. You sideline the male character and you put the two female characters in the forefront. That's not, the character's called He-Man. I mean, the whole thing, it's called Castle Grayskull or whatever the hell it's called. It's known as He-Man. It's like Star Wars is known as the 4 main characters and his pet dog. But he's like, it's coming to the same conclusion with He-Man. It's his stupid Soylent project, but it's something he hasn't taken very seriously. It's like, it's just a paycheck to him. Where was I going with that? I don't know. My point was, every so often Kevin Smith will surprise you. He's not completely sucking down the Soylent. Like that joke about the Muslim girl in the movie. I'm sure his wife and daughter were like, oh my God, I don't know if we can put this in there. It's like, why? It's true, and it's funny. And it's also like a little bit of a splash of cold water in the movie that, like, he's telling you that he's willing to go after everyone. Anyway, for the most part, I do think he's kind of smoked himself stupid. The thing with weed is, it's like, it's supposed to be a treat. It's not supposed to be a daily thing. It's like, just do it Friday night. It's like, that's when you can do it. Friday night. It's not the rest. You don't need to be in a fog every day. Okay, so this is the Punisher skull logo. Yeah, we're swapping out the Punisher. Okay, I didn't consider this until now, but this is more so feels like market manipulation, like a new Coke trick. You announce something new. It's like, so sales, people are desperate to buy the old thing to get the stock of the old thing. And then when you go back to the thing that you replaced, you're going to get a bunch of sales on this. And like comic book people, they're masters of this kind of market manipulation. They do things like where you've got one comic series to go, the story is continued in another comic book series, so you have to buy that. Like, that's pretty chicken shit for kids who are buying the comics on a budget. It's like that seems manipulative. Or covers. The covers I don't have so much a problem with, except for the retailers. It screws the retailers out, because that's going to people who are collectors. They're not reading the story. We're changing stories across comic books. It's like you're requiring them to buy another product. That seems a bit sleazy to me. The cover stuff is like, if you want to be some kind of, you're just a collector, you're not reading the stories. But then that screws over the retailers, because they're like, okay, yeah, we don't have room on our shelves to sell. We don't want to sell low volumes of multiple products. We want to sell high volumes of a single product. So it's like, why don't you just write better stories so people want the stories? Oh, yeah, we can't write better stories because we're far left-wing globalist SJW, just insane people. And, usually you're going to see it from the younger folks are these SJWs, but, some of these older folks who are still in comics are like, I guess they took off the mask and I don't know. I can't quite wrap my head around like liberals who are old and they see the direction the country is going, and that they decide like, oh yeah, we need to go further in that direction. Like, really? The BLM riots of 2020, you don't want to go further in that direction? The funny thing about the whole Punisher skull logo and the BLM riots and what it has done to people who were kind of libertarian, who a lot of us are like, we're not this thin blue line right wing. We want better police held accountable. But what these these riots have taught us is like, oh, okay, we do still want better police and we want them held accountable. And want better district attorneys, but you look at what the police are dealing with. Like, oh, they're dealing with animals. These people are dealing with just it's not this narrative that we had before. But I mean, we still, like, we're not posting this thin blue line thing where cops can do no wrong. Like, no, we want cops held accountable. You can't shoot somebody in a wheelchair. We don't want them just fired. We want them in prison for 1,000 years for shooting somebody in a wheelchair who's wheeling away from you, or who's jogging away from you, and you shoot them 7 times in the back. No, we want better cops. But then you see what they're dealing with, and you're like, oh, okay, hey, let's defund the police. Are you sure about that? Where do you live? Oh, I live in a gated community with armed guards, and I'm surrounded by Liberty devices and security cameras and steel doors. Oh, okay, so, defund the police, like you still have your, you live off in the hills, 50 miles away from any issue. It's like, what about everyone else who's living in an area where they kind of need a police presence? Oh, well, they should want to defund the police too. We'll just have social workers. We'll just go out and we'll just talk to the people. Really? Because Walnut Creek, San Francisco Bay Area, LA, basically every city in America, you've seen the people who are moving stock around and working on the payment a little bit later. It's very clever, because what they do is they take stock from the stores and just leave, and then they set up swap meets where they sell the same stock that their buy-in cost was actually zero, because they just took it off the shelves and put it in bags and walked out with it. And so they sell it at the swap meets. So they have to pay a swap meet fee, probably some small fee, $100 to sell your stuff. So you're selling like laundry detergent and hair products and cosmetics, whatever can fit in a bag. And you're selling it. You can sell it for 3/4 of the price or half the price, but it doesn't really matter what you're selling it for, because it costs you zero. So once you pay your swap meet fee, or a lot of people are taking this stuff. They're buying it, I guess, sort of, except they're not exchanging. The money's invisible, and they just sell it on eBay. So you can buy, lipsticks, and you're selling all this stuff, whatever. You can sell it on eBay, or you can sell it at a swap meet. It's like people are seeing this, and they're like, oh, so you want to defund the police to have this kind of stuff? Like, it's the police are the problem? Hey, we're willing to admit that the police are some of the problem. Like I just mentioned, there's police who do a lot of bad things. Unfortunately for the left, they run the rainbow. There's not just white cops who are doing bad things. There's a lot of POCs who are deleting people left and right. We all want better cops. It's just this concept of I don't think you're going to convince anyone post 2020 to defund the police and that the police are entirely the problem. In fact, most of us who looked at the police as these totalitarian bullies, we look at it as like, yeah, that's true, but why don't we refund them anyway? And we want a lot of things differently. I don't know how this was a comic book video, but got into. The thing is, it's like nothing exists in a vacuum. It's all facets. I mean, so imagine, in the comic books, they show these people pulling down statues and they try to paint it in the best light possible. It's like, you want to pull down icons. It's like, okay, well, that's the state of the nation it's in. So it's like those are icons to an old country that is no longer. The country has changed. The demographics has changed. You pull down all those icons, it doesn't matter, because that country has been gone for like 50 years. But in the comics, they try to portray it as like, oh, we're just a peaceful revolution. It's like, I don't think anyone's buying that anymore. I don't think people are buying what the mainstream is selling. It doesn't matter if the mainstream is YouTube, the YouTube media machine, comics. Like, there's this mainstream narrative, and it's even on YouTube, people are able to sneak in an alt messaging, but most of the alt messaging is going to be on Odysee, Bit Chute, Gab, Discord, Telegram, not on the mainstream, which is awesome, because the more censorious the mainstream becomes, and YouTube gets worse every day, the better it is for the alt community, because you find like, oh, all the good channels I used to listen to are gone. They're all on Odysee now. It's like, okay, well, I spend more time listening to stuff on Odysee than I do on YouTube now, which is it's just the way it's got to go, because that's the future of YouTube. They don't want to be what they were. I mean, now they just want to be like CNN, Tube, and they want a monologue, not a dialogue. And like YouTube used to be a back and forth, and now it's like, oh, we're getting rid of the dislikes. And it's like, well, we'll get rid of the comments, or they heavily censor the comments. It's like, well, that's what people are in for YouTube for. They're for the comments. Anyway, it feels like the mainstream is kind of holding on to power, and it's slowly slipping through their grasp. Anyway, I don't know. I got off track on this. Like, comment, subscribe, and I will see you guys all next video.